everybody. Welcome to another great American story. I'm Ron Hoon, joined as always by John Noetzel, the creator of the Great American Story. And John, the story of Alaska is wrapped up in 19th century politics.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There is intrigue, there is political drama, and it all actually happened thousands of miles away from Alaska.
It did, and it's probably one of the best real estate deals in the history of the world, right? I mean,
sure.
You want to talk about a smoking deal. Boy, did America make out big on the Alaskan trade, for sure, or the Alaskan deal. But yeah, you were talking 19th century, right after the Civil War.
Right.
And the architect was part of the Lincoln administration, William Seward.
William Seward, yeah,
Secretary of State.
And he actually, there was at least some correspondence in the middle of the war.
There was.
Where he is still communicating. And I honestly think if it wasn't for William Seward and the fact that he lived through, we're going to talk about this here in a moment, probably one of, if not the darkest night in American history.
True.
If it wasn't for him surviving that, if it wasn't for him being as doggedly determined as he was and able to establish relationships with the key people involved, it's quite possible it never would have happened, and it ultimately would have become part of Great Britain, which would have become part of Canada.
Yeah, and he had both philosophical and real tangible reasons for wanting to expand into Alaskan territory.
Sure.
I mean, there was manifest destiny, right?
Yes,
we were in that period of time when that was driving our expansion westward. And we talked about this with the Polk episode that we did just a couple weeks ago about how we had acquired all this land. We had gotten the northern Oregon, Washington territories from Britain, and we had gotten the rest of it from Mexican territory. America's on this westward expansion that just from, like you said, from sea to shining sea.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at Alaska. And beyond manifest destiny, there were some real solid reasons, economical, resource-wise, for us to want to expand into Alaska.
Sure.
And we can get into that a little bit in a bit.
And every good story needs to have a good villain.
Indeed.
And in this story, Seward was able to milk it for all it was worth. There was a villain, and it was Great Britain.
Yeah.
And there were real worries, both on the Russian part, because this was not called Alaska. Originally, it was Russian America.
Yeah.
And they had real worries that Britain might just come in there and just grab it. Mm-hmm. So that's really why they wanted to sell it to the U.S. I think otherwise they thought all it will take is a whim on the part of the British, and they'll just come and grab it.
Well, and I think the U.S. was viewing it, too, as if Britain did grab that, now they owned what was Canada. Right. So now if they come in, now they've got that whole vast expanse. So I think we saw it as a way to squeeze Britain a little bit by getting that part of the continent.
Yep. We really boxed them out in that regard.
We did box them out. There were some, in my research, there were some really interesting reasons, economical and otherwise, I guess you could call them, of why we wanted that territory. And one of them, I thought this was really interesting. One of them was ice.
Yeah.
Because there was no such thing as modern refrigeration at that time.
Right.
But Alaska actually, they shipped a lot of ice from Alaska into California to keep things cool. I thought it was kind of anecdotal, but another part was the whaling industry.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Americans,
He was intrigued by that. William Seward was totally intrigued by that and knew the value of it. And really interesting. We're kind of hopscotching here ahead, but when it came right down to the nub of the deal between the United States and Russia, they had the framework, let's call it, at $7 million. But then Russia came back and said they wanted some stipulations there about the continuation of ice coming out of Alaska, that would get shipped all the way to San Francisco.
That's right.
And they were in that business. And Seward had to hold the line and said this was going to be, there were no qualifiers.
That's
right. It had to be a, quote, phrase we hear nowadays, a clean deal.
Yeah.
But let's go back in time, John. Let's go to that fateful night of April the 14th, 1865. President Abraham Lincoln, assassinated by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater, but it was part of a much larger plot. The intention there on the part of these plotters was to also kill Andrew Johnson, the vice president,
That's right.
and to kill William Seward. Why would they have even put him within their sights? You could make the argument that he was about as powerful a person, politically speaking, in the country as anybody. Like Lincoln was 1A and he was 1B.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he is thought today, John, I think, to be immensely successful in the negotiations that he put together. This great deal. You said it. It was an amazing real estate deal. 2 cents an acre.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are homes in Alaska today, a house for $7 million.
Indeed.
And this whole thing went for $7.2 million.
And land area, I think, twice the size of Texas. I think that's what they compared it to.
I think that's about right. And yet, if it hadn't, and John and I, we love to do stuff like this. You play the what if game. If it hadn't been for William Seward having that accident where he was thrown from a carriage, where he had to have his face, his jaw, and his neck in a wire and leather frame, it had been incredibly uncomfortable. But if that hadn't happened, when the attacker came in that night, we're talking about Lewis Powell, 10 o'clock at night, knocks on the door, claims to be delivering medicine. They're very skeptical. They don't buy it inside his house at Lafayette Square. They're like, no, we'll take the medicine to him. Oh, no, I have to give it to him myself. When he got in that room and he started attacking the Secretary of State at the time, he very well could have hit his mark, could have killed him if it wasn't for the frame over his face.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, that was, I mean, and a near-death experience for him.
Yes.
You're right. I mean, the dots that connect really throughout history are amazing.
I really don't think if it wasn't for him, this deal ever would have got done.
Yeah.
So, it happens. He literally then is between life and death for days, actually weeks.
That's right.
And yet, as an older man at the time, already in his late 60s, he had dogged determination that he survived for a reason.
Right.
And he was going to come back, and he was going to throw caution to the wind.
Yeah.
And go for what he thought was going to be best for the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And Russia wanted to offload this part of the world too. They were having trouble managing it, quite frankly. I mean, they the fur trade had kind of not gone the way that they or it had kind of declined. It was a primary source of income for them. Right. But they couldn't manage it after the Crimean War. Yeah. So they had interest in offloading it, and I think it was easier on their end to make this deal than it was on our end. Yeah. And we call this Seward's Folly. This was kind of the buzz phrase, the catchphrase for this, but really was it? And I think that there is, in my research, was pretty interesting, is that's kind of a myth.
It really is a myth.
Because a lot of people actually supported this expansion.
You know what, John? If it really was simply Seward's Folly and the whole country was laughing at him, it would not have been a nearly unanimous vote in the Senate.
That's
you can't see something like that to this day.
That's right.
I believe it was 37-2.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so that gives you the indication right there. You start to dig into it, and there was one newspaper reference that mentioned the word folly.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, it popped up again. And then when Seward's son wrote his biography on his father, he brings it up again, of all people. And then it kind of just sort of melds its way into the American mindset. But in reality, it was a fantastic real estate deal.
Yeah.
And time, of course, would prove him right over and over, particularly once the Klondike Gold Rush began. But yeah,
I love
it's
that
a misnomer, and you're history detectives.
Yes.
John and I kept digging into it to find out that it really wasn't thought of as a folly at the time at all, John.
No, and most newspapers did support it. You're right. I mean, there was that one newspaper, but I love that you brought up his son, because I found the quote that his son recounted his father saying later in life. He said, "Which of your public acts do you think will live longest in the memory of the American people?" Seward replied, "The purchase of Alaska, but it will take another generation to find out."
Wow.
And he was spot on.
Yes.
I mean, right? So, so we're in 1867 now, right? So the Civil War is over. The Civil War kind of delayed this a little bit.
Yes. Oh, there's no doubt about it.
The Tsar of Russia wanted to kind of move forward with this. The Civil War, Lincoln's assassination. Yes. We had a lot going on.
And it makes you wonder if the British were so intent on getting it and having that foothold from sea to sea, from the Pacific to Atlantic, that would have been the time frame. That was the most dangerous time for the United States to possibly have lost Alaska. But yes, he kept that relationship going with Edward de Steckel, who was the Russian minister to the U.S., had this relationship, and the Russian minister knew the United States wanted to buy it. They wanted to offload it. It was a money-losing operation for them.
It was.
Maybe at one time it wasn't, but he approaches Seward once he finally gets the okay. By the way, this is pre-internet.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to send a telegram, or you got to wait months for a letter.
Yeah.
But he gets the okay, and we're going to continue the story. He gets the okay, and there's a late night knock on the door.
That's right.
10 o'clock at night. He's like, I got to deliver this news to the Secretary of State. It's fascinating what happens
after
that.
Yeah. Hey, but before we go to the break, let's look at our trivia question here. In the aftermath of the Alaska Purchase, a major scandal erupted when it was discovered that of the $7.2 million paid to Russia, a significant portion never actually reached the Russian treasury. What happened to the missing $200,000? And A, it was lost when the steamer General Simpson carrying the gold bullion sank off the coast of British Columbia. B, it was used by Russian Minister Edward de Steckel to pay lobbying fees. Or C, it was redirected to the French government to settle Catherine the Great's century-old debts.
Those are some really
Something
good
tells me
options,
you know
John.
this one. I don't know.
I really don't.
Okay.
I actually think there could have been some compromised folks in Congress. I'm going to go B.
Okay.
Answer next.
You got it.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. John, the question has to do with the aftermath of the Alaskan Purchase and the scandal when it was discovered that not the full $7.2 million was paid to Russia.
That's right.
By the way, they wanted that in cold, hard gold, not cold, hard cash.
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay, what are the options?
So,
again?
it was lost when the steamer General Simpson carrying the gold bullion sank off the coast of British Columbia. B, it was used by Russian Minister Edward de Steckel to pay lobbying fees or bribes to American congressmen. And C, it was redirected to the French government to settle Catherine the Great.
I know that kind of thing happened back in the 1800s in Congress. And so I'm going B. You tell me, did I get it or not, John?
You shot and scored, my friend. Yeah, absolutely.
There you are.
Yeah. Corruption just...
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's always existed, hasn't it?
I mean, yes. And some of these congressmen, I mean, let's face it, the rules are stricter today. But some of these congressmen could also sort of be lobbyists at the same time. And so, not a shocker there, that's for sure.
Certainly one of the darker sides of this story, but Steckel was so desperate to offload the territory that he didn't just negotiate, he really campaigned. And congressmen were... happy to accept some money. And even President Johnson noted in his private diaries that Seward told him several prominent members of Congress had their, quote, hands out to ensure the appropriation bill passed.
Gee whiz.
But you're right. I mean, it was a popular thing because it passed in the Senate. It was actually the House that held up the payment for like 16 months.
Right.
From the time of that deal until they actually got paid.
Really interesting aspect there, which is, the Senate had to approve the treaty. That's their job.
Yep.
But the House has to come up with the actual money.
Yep, they carry the purse strings. That's
correct.
Right.
And there's an interesting sidelight to that. But before we jump ahead, let's first take you to that night.
Yeah.
So there's a knock on the door. Supposedly they were playing a card game. Seward was at his home there on Lafayette Square. It's just a quick walk over to the White House.
Yep.
Of course, he's going to have that proximity. And so now he is a couple of years into the Johnson administration. It's the night of March 29th, 1867. There comes a knock on the door. And by the way, I love thinking about the fact that here's Seward, 2 years removed from an assassination attempt that scarred his face and literally took him within inches of his life.
Yeah.
And here he is 2 years later, staying up late at night, 10 o'clock, playing a card game with his family.
Yeah.
Right?
Serving under a president who was not popular at all.
No,
I mean,
right?
this guy was a disaster, right?
Yes,
so,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of dynamics at work here in his life for sure, right?
Okay, so it comes knocking on the door is his friend and the mutual respect between him and the Russian minister, Edward de Steckel. Steckel says, hey, I got the final okay from my government to complete this deal. He's like, let's get going. Tomorrow morning, let's roll.
Yeah.
And a very anxious Secretary of State said, why wait?
That's right.
If you can get your people together, I'll get my people together. They needed to get some clerks involved, that kind of a thing. It wasn't like you were going to do it on a word processor.
Got to get it notarized,
Johnny.
right?
Yeah, right. He said, I'll meet you at midnight at my office there at the State Department.
Wow.
And so that was exactly the way it went down.
They hashed this out till like 4 a.m, did they not?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Correct.
Give them credit.
And, Seward, his instinct was to keep it as buttoned up as possible, these negotiations, because he knew the way Washington worked probably better than anybody else.
Yeah.
If it leaked, there would be opponents who could get out there and start, wailing against it, and it might have never happened.
That's right.
Whether it was a true belief on the part of some people that they just didn't want it to happen, or it was demagoguery, whatever it was, he knew that they could take no chances. So he then did bring it to the cabinet and said, here's our deal, $7 million. And in the end, they did have to put a couple 100,000 more in there, reaching a total of $7.2 million.
But 2 cents an acre.
2 cents an acre, John. I know.
I think it's really cool. The check that they wrote for that still exists.
Okay.
It's still in the National Archives.
Is it really?
It is, yeah. We'll throw a picture up here. It's really cool. It's and it's made out to Edward de Steckel, envoy extraordinary.
Wow.
For $7.2 million.
Oh, that is one more reason to visit the National Archives. And by the way, if you do that, there are lines to get into a lot of places. Generally, there's not like a big long line to go into the National Archives. It's worth it.
Or the Library of Congress, for that matter.
Yes, right.
Well worth the visits, yeah.
Okay, so then the question becomes, we think we have a deal. Now comes into play, and what is he going to do to try to actually get the Senate to move on it? Because, John, there were some people who were like, slow your roll.
Yeah.
This is March. Let's work on it later in the year. Maybe we start to deal with it come November or December.
Yeah.
He knew that was a non-starter because it would give people time to fight against it and build momentum the other way, which he thought he had the momentum right now.
I wonder what the politics were behind that. Like, why, if you knew that this land, if you were invested in Manifest Destiny, if you knew this land was rich in resources, which they knew, they knew it had fisheries, they knew it was a gateway to the Pacific for trade.
Right.
So America's looking to begin trade in the Pacific. There's places now where they can put coal stores along the way now if they have this.
Yep.
There's the ice thing. There's the whaling thing. You wonder what was the politics. I guess we can say that about anything in America these days, right? I mean, there's
Well,
But
and
16
so
months later.
I wonder if part of it was the fact that he had a lot of political enemies over the course of his time.
Yes.
You know, I mean, one senator, he started throwing these lavish parties at night to try to woo senators to come over and see his point of view, that kind of a thing. There was one senator, I believe he was from Maine, who said, "I'm not going to attend one of your parties." He did say in a kind of a brief aside in D.C. back on Capitol Hill that he would vote for it as long as part of the deal was that Russia would ensure that Seward moved there and stayed there forever. So you had William Seward, the Secretary of State, working to negotiate this deal. He believed that it was the best deal possible for America.
Yeah.
But he did have to sell it.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said earlier, it's 16 months later. We're,
Right.
The House is, I don't know, dragging their feet. So 16 months later, August 1st, 1868, they finally issue the warrant for the purchase. It's kind of funny because in my notes here, I put that the Tsarist autocracy required no substantive ratification procedure or internal political agreement. So, and the Russians
You're the Tsar.
And the Russians,
it's good to be the king.
And they were aggravated by the lengthy approval process on the U.S. side. Think about it. They've been trying to get this done during the Civil War. I mean,
yes, right.
When Lincoln was alive.
Yeah,
So they're America, you're dragging your feet. You want this land or not?
And also, there's a story that is told that there was, at the last minute when the House was, deciding whether or not to fund this deal or not, that the widow of a man Benjamin Perkins, his widow came forward to say, hold on a minute, I am owed some huge amount of money because my husband worked with the Russians to fund part of their guns and ammo for the Crimean War, and I am owed money. And there suddenly there was this last minute snafu to the point where Stuckel had to write a letter saying, we are very concerned about this in Russia, that the deal might fall apart because this lady at the 11th hour has come forward to say, hey, I need some of that money.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, there were all kinds of things. It was a closer deal in the House than it was in the Senate. But it did finally come together. Now,
well, just give it 30 years and the Klondike Gold Rush paid for itself, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the other thing. Is this thing paid for itself.
Right.
I mean,
and so if you take a look at just the way that it all came together, in the end it worked out fine. But I think my favorite part of the whole story is that once he wraps up his time as Secretary of State, he decides, I'm going to go see Alaska.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see the West Coast. He gets on actually, the first thing he does, I believe, is goes to his wife's grave to leave some flowers. And he turns around with whoever might have been there at the time and said, okay, I've said my goodbyes. I'm ready to go on this trip of a lifetime. Travels by train, and I believe, John, the cross-country railroad at the time was just kind of coming together.
Sure.
There were some segments where he still had to do stagecoach.
Oh, wow.
I believe. And he gets to San Francisco. Now, he had stopped in Detroit and Chicago, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Salt Lake City.
Interesting.
Met with Brigham Young.
Oh, wow.
Went to a service in the Mormon Tabernacle. And was, had a lot of meetings there, and then continued on to San Francisco, where he was hailed as the greatest American statesman ever. They loved the fact that he cared about the Pacific Coast and knew that Alaska and its connections to shipping in San Francisco was going to be a pretty cool deal. He got on that ship, that steamer, and started to head north. As the map shows, he spent some time in the Puget Sound. He gave a great speech I believe in Victoria, British Columbia, and then finally set foot on Alaskan territory in Sitka.
Wow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately wouldn't live to see it become an actual state.
Correct.
He
needed another 100 years.
He needed 100 years. But it would remain under Army control until June of 1877, and then governed by various military authorities. And then a civil government was installed in May 1884.
And the story is told that while he's on this journey and he goes and he spends time in Sitka, and there are, American soldiers there. It's American territory now. There are people in the traditional Russian garb, that still live there in Sitka. But as they continued their journey by boat, someone asked him, what do you think of this scenery? And he said, the day will come where Americans will come to this land for their vacations.
Wow.
In large numbers when they finally realize how beautiful Alaska is.
That's something.
Isn't
wow.
it? Yeah.
I'm going to tie this into current events.
Okay.
Seward actually tried to buy Greenland following
yes.
the purchase of Alaska.
Right? How about that?
So apparently Greenland has been in the U.S. sites for a long time, but Congress put their foot down and said, nope, no more ice boxes.
Yeah. Well, we're taping this in 2026. Who knows? You may be watching in a few more years. Maybe something changes. Anyway, that's today's great American story, the story of Alaska. Thanks for joining us.